All right, here we go. Give it the old try again. The first video, my audio was messed up. I had no vocals, so we'll see what happens. So here we are to watch Starnld and the W-Uni NA1 guys in a skirmish against a team with 2 heavy tanks and 5 Cromwells. If you look at the lineups, the W-Uni guys chose to go with 6 Cromwells and a Type 64, which is a pretty popular scout at Tier 6. And the enemy team has an OI and a T150, both of which are very strong Tier 6 heavy tanks. So right off the bat, from the start of the game, I feel like there's a pretty serious mistake being made here. If you look at the route these guys are taking, there's a very open, very exposed, and those Cromwells on the enemy team can get up into this area pretty quickly to provide spots. And we're going to see that right here in just a second. So as we can see here, Starnld gets spotted. He reacts quickly enough that he bounces a shell. But to avoid that, what he should have done is he should have gone right along the F1 rock into the 1 line and really stayed low behind these dunes until his offside scout could have done something and spotted some more enemies, and then they could have made their presence known closer to K4, K5, and then they would have been able to shoot enemies here and enemies here. But as we watch, it looks like Starnld is telling everybody to push into the riverbed here. But another big issue that I have with this play is Starnld doesn't wait for his backup. So he's in there first, and he eats 3 shells before his backup shows up. Now, the W-Uni NA1 guys show really good focus fire on that Cromwell, where they're going to take him out right here in a second, but they trade 1 for 1. Starnld, the teammate that sent me the replay in, for the other Cromwell. Now, really, in a skirmish situation, what you want to try to avoid is a 1 for 1 trade, because you're limited to 7 tanks per team. So a 1 for 1 trade is pretty difficult to swallow. So moving forward, we're going to see what happens. Now here it looks like the team shows some okay focus fire, but if we had focused down any one of those Cromwells, if we had focused on one Cromwell first and taken him out and then focused on another Cromwell, we may have had 2 dead Cromwells there in around the same amount of time. And we've also lost John Mellencamp along with Starnld. So we're still 2 for 2. Arnold focuses on the same Cromwell that he's been shooting at, and Trinomafia in the Type 64 does a nice job of cleaning up that other Cromwell that was on low health. So in the background, we see the T150 pushing in, and we spot a Cromwell Berlin that kind of cliff dive into the gorge. So all the turrets turn to take out that Cromwell, but in doing so, we've allowed the T150 and the OI to group up and push in. So at this point, I feel like, it's a 5-2 lead. This should be a pretty easy game to put away. All the W-Uni guys have to do is break contact, use their view range, and slowly but surely eat up the hit points that the T150 and the OI have. So Unfortunately, we're going to see Voltron Maximus get taken out here. He gets tracked by the OI and cleaned up by the 150. Now, if you look, our team, our W-Uni guys are spread out a little far. We've got Microzap and Trinomafia over here that are grouped together, and Johnny Go Easy and Arnold Schwarzenegger over here, but they're not really grouped up. They're not really close together. What Arnold and Johnny need to do is they need to group up, and Microzap and Trinomafia need to group up and move as either two separate groups of two or work together as a full unit of 4. Because in this position, they really could have flanked around and gotten the rear and the sides of both heavy tanks and seesawed them, where one tank or one group peaks while the turrets are turned the other way, and then as the turrets start to swing, the other group peaks, and vice versa, so on and so forth. So, we don't really see that. The Type 64 runs for the cap, which is a smart move, and the Cromwell B looks like he's going to go to the cap as well. Arnold and Johnny had some pretty good flanking shots there, but they only take the one. So the Cromwell B, Microzap, he actually doesn't set foot in the cap. He goes into the riverbed, and Arnold and Johnny, instead of keeping pressure on the heavies, start to fall back through the village towards the cap. So that's kind of an issue. Those guys need to be working on keeping those tanks as far away from the cap as possible and allowing the Type 64 and the other Cromwell B to cap out. So Microzap shouldn't be down in the riverbed whatsoever, and Johnny and Arnold shouldn't be pulling back, allowing the T-150 and the OI to advance back towards their cap with really no danger whatsoever. What we should have seen happen is these two should have flanked around and tried to pull the T-150 and the OI away from the cap so that the Type 64 would have had more time to cap out and win the game. But instead, what we're seeing is they're pulling the OI and the T-150 down along the riverbed back towards the cap. And here we see Arnold make a pretty serious mistake. He trades almost 400 hit points to help take out the OI, and then he drives right in front of the T-150, allowing the T-150 to clean him up pretty easily. What he should have done was fall back towards Johnny and allowed Johnny and Trinomafia, who stepped off the cap for whatever reason, to help with the T-150. And then at this point, we get a pretty good seesaw set up, but Johnny kind of hesitates, and Trinomafia pulls back behind cover. What Johnny should have done is we should have seen Johnny pull up into this area here and use this cover against the T-150 to take flanking shots as he's here behind the OI. And when his turret swings to Johnny Go Easy, Trinomafia, who is up here behind this rock, should have been peeking from this side, taking those same shots down at the T-150. But it looks like there's not a lot of communication happening, and we kind of break contact with the T-150. And I have to say, this T-150 has shown just the right amount of aggression and is playing his tank right. He's got enough hit points that he can take 2, maybe 3 shots from the W-Uni team, and he's got a gun that can eliminate either one of these guys at the same time. So, once again, I feel like these guys aren't really coordinating very well. If they were going to pull back around behind here, the Type 64 needs to wait, and they need to try to move as a group. And once they get here, they need to break contact and come to somewhere in this area, J2, K2, and use their view range to outspot the T-150 and wear him down. The best way to deal with that tank is to get as far away from as possible, so that he's less likely to spot the Cromwell and the Type 64, and their view range is able to pick him up, and they can pick him apart from range. So it looks like maybe we're going to see that Trinomafia and the Type 64 and Johnny Go Easy and the Cromwell are making that movement. They spot the T-150 coming up out of the riverbed, but the T-150 stops because he knows he's got an inaccurate gun. So he wants to make sure that he takes a sure shot. The Cromwell and the Type 64 are spotted. So the T-150 does the proper thing, angles his armor, turns his turret to present the most difficult target to the enemy. And then I feel Trinomafia makes a pretty big mistake here. By pulling up on this ridge line and taking the shot at the T-150, he's still close enough that the T-150 will spot him, and he's not breaking contact hard enough. These two tanks are fast and mobile with the view range. They really need to break contact and try to pick up the T-150 at the edge of view range. That way it's less likely that that guy's going to see him. So Trinomafia tries to take a few more shots at the T-150, or maybe he thought about it, but then he thought better of it. And Johnny Go Easy's kind of late to the party. He really shouldn't have pulled up to this position after Trinomafia left, because the likelihood that he is spotted is pretty high, and the T-150 is aiming in this general direction. So there's a pretty brave move from Johnny Go Easy, but he should have tried to stay low and keep unspotted and not risk taking the shot from the T-150, which would put him out of the game. So once again, whoops, hit the wrong button. Once again, our guys are moving back into a close range engagement, which really favors the T-150. And on top of all that, they lose track of him. So now we don't have any idea where the T-150 is. He could be closing the distance, or he could be removing himself from the equation just to get a better shot at either of these tanks. But Johnny spots the T-150 as he goes past this low ground. And another key mistake here is Trinomafia turns around and starts to come back. What he should have done, knowing that the T-150 is here, he should have circled on around to get shots at the rear and sides of the T-150 and let the Cromwell bait him out. And once again, you've got this T-150 in a position where he can be seesawed. His turret can constantly be turning, because if he ignores the Type 64 shooting him from the rear, the Type 64 kills him. Or if he ignores the Cromwell to his front, the Cromwell kills him. So as long as these guys worked together and communicated, this could have been a very technical but easy victory. I may have spoiled the ending there. But as we see, Johnny and Trinomafia, they get too hung up on each other. And there's a big mistake here that Johnny makes. He goes all out to get as far away as he can. But then he turns around. So in turning around, Trinomafia continues to flank around the T-150, which is good. But instead of getting on two different planes of fire with the T-150, Johnny kind of hesitates in this area. But as the T-150 turns his attention to the Type 64, Johnny tries to poke up and get some shots, when what he really should be doing, instead of sitting here being idle, because the T-150 we can see is still moving, as is the Type 64, he needed to be moving through this area here to get around on the side or rear of the T-150 to get sure, easy shots at him. So Trina Mafia got close to the T-150, took some shots, and we can only assume they didn't penetrate if they hit. He lands one shot and penetrates, but that allows the T-150 to pick up the kill. And Johnny goes in at a really bad plane here. His tank is all about mobility, so he takes that away by going up over this ridge and really announces the lane of approach that he's coming from. Whereas if he had stayed low and gone around this ridgeline this way into this position here, I can't really turn the camera far enough, he would have been able to get shots and use this ridgeline as cover and kind of peekaboo at the T-150 for a few shots, which is all he needs. The T-150 only has 230 hit points left, so 2 shots from the Cromwell and the T-150 is dead. That's it. Game over. The T-150 loses. But instead, he drives up and over the ridgeline straight in front of the T-150 and eats a great big shell, and that's the end of the game, folks. If you like this kind of replay review, or if you want to see different kinds of World of Tanks videos, let me know in the comments down below. Hopefully some of the things that you heard today in this video will help. I know I said seesaw probably 100 times and you're tired of hearing it, but thanks to Starnld for sending me the replay, and once again, props to the T-150 player on the enemy team. Have a great day.